Hey y'all, so today I'm going to be doing some pots on the patio of the meadow house. So we're not quite finished with the renovation indoors of the meadow house. That will be a video for Flock when we actually take you through the meadow house. But I wanted to do some basically plant makeovers here. We've already focused on the garden, but now we're really focusing on patio plants, and then we're going to be focusing on interior plants. So I basically went to mainly Lowe's, and then I went with my mother to one of my, back when I lived in Pennsylvania, local plant shops called Corky's Greenhouse. And she picked this plant out. She really loved the delphinium, and it has a really beautiful color to it, very blue. And I asked her to pick one that still had time to bloom. So I try to get the plants that aren't really in full bloom quite yet. So I picked this up a few days ago, and I wanted to go with like a more restricted color palette. But then as my mom was picking out one and I wanted to get a foxglove, and the only foxglove that was available was pink. And of course, I really love the yellow coreopsis, these thread leaf coreopsis. You can see there's like different cultivars, so they have like different colorways here. I figured, you know what? Why don't we just mimic a bit more of the meadow, which has many different types of colors of flowers, and we'll go with more color on the front of the patio. And then we still have to lay the concrete for the back patio, and we could go with a more restricted color palette. So I ended up getting these lava stone planters, which are actually really lightweight. So this is like real lava stone on the outside, but super lightweight, super easy to move, especially for a planter this size. And I'm going to just do kind of purples and whites. So this is like an elegance lavender that's white, and this is an elegance lavender that's purple. And then you could see that there's a different species of lavender right here that has a bit more of a purple that fades to pink. And then I have mully grass. So this is, it doesn't look like much now. Let me try to get this one out. So this is one of my favorite grasses. It's a native grass, and it gets these wispy, cloud-like, almost like gauzy inflorescences that are purple, and then I have one that's white. So I believe this is white, and I have a purple version somewhere. But I have lots of other plants as well. I have the Santolina, again, which is like a much more, when I'm thinking like a restricted color palette on the other side, this is starting to feel a little bit more like Mediterranean or kind of French cottage limestoney, and that's the color palette that's going to go over there. And then so this would probably fit somewhere in there. And then over here, I figure a little bit more terracotta, so it'll bring in kind of the cedar coloring of some of the furniture. We have to put some cedar shakes on the front of this house. And these terracotta pots I got from White Flower Farm. They're so beautiful. This is all hand done. So you can see it's kind of like a carved rose in there. So it's a bit more whimsical, and I feel like it brings kind of that farmhouse vibe in, which is why I was like kind of comfortable. Here's the foxglove, part of the reason why I wanted the foxglove, which was like, again, part of the reason why I was like, you know what, let's go with a little bit more color. We could have a bit more whimsy, and it's like the opening of the house. You want it to feel a bit more welcoming. So I'm pretty stoked. I'm gonna start planting. They have way more plants than I need here. So whatever I don't plant here, I'll probably plant up in maybe another pot, or we'll try to fit some places within the gardens elsewhere around Flock. Okay, so I'm going to plant up this foxglove pot right here, and I'm going to face it towards me so you won't see the beautiful design of the foxglove, unfortunately, but I'll switch it back around. But I already know what I'm going to plant in here. So this is the digitalis, this is the foxglove, and you can see that it has a cylindrical, typical leaf, and I already know what I'm going to plant up in here because I don't want to have a coreopsis that has the same type of leaf, if you could see here. I'd rather do something that has a bit more of a thread leaf. So this is the thread leaf coreopsis, and I'll probably just plant that behind because it looks really nice and feathery. So what I'm gonna do is use some of the Espoma potting medium here. I also brought a bunch of vermiculite and perlite, what I have left, but I'm going to use that in with the lavender because it prefers a bit more well-draining mix. I could have probably put a little mesh on the bottom of this so that the soil didn't fall through. It actually has a pretty big hole on the bottom, which is nice because it just means it's a bit more well draining. So here we go. This is threadleaf coreopsis. This is called Coreopsis moonbeam. So that's nice. It's rooted very nicely. And this is a native plant, just happens to be a cultivar. And you can see it's not fully in bloom yet, but it'll be pretty against this pink. And this is the pink. This was the only digitalis that they had. This is called Arctic Fox Rose. And when I went to Lowe's, they also had this kind, but they were all in full bloom already. And you know, it's fine being able to have like that instant bouquet if you want that full bloom already, but I'd rather see it bloom and see it emerge. So the digitalis gets like a nice tall spike. So I think that will look really pretty. All right, that's fit in there. It doesn't really, you might be able to fit like another small plant over the edges. I think this would be maybe a bit too much color, you know what I mean? But that could look kind of cool actually, you know. I'm up for it. I'm up for doing some color. I mean, that fits in a nice pocket. I have one on each side. This, I think, is an annual. It's called the fan flower, the blue fan flower. And I only found ones that were in full bloom. But I have a feeling that with these annuals, sometimes they bloom for quite a long time. So let's see if I could find what I did with my, yes, here it is, little trowel. Let's put some soil down here. So yeah, I guess I was a little bit more set on having a bit more restricted color palette, but sometimes you surprise yourself and you're like, okay, yeah, well rooted. And this is, you know, going to Lowe's. I mean, these were relatively, I got a bunch of lavender for like $9. It was not bad. And those are perennial lavenders. You got to make sure you're getting the perennial lavender versus the annual lavender because depending on what zone you're in. So I'm in zone 5, 6, so I want to make sure that they come up year over year. So this might be the only thing, I'm not familiar with this fan flower stuff, but I think I got it. I picked it up in the more annual section, so. I was going to say you could have a plant that hangs down a little bit, and then I saw this one sitting there, and I'm like, hey, that actually kind of works. All right, let me show you what that looks like. Yeah, so you can imagine this will kind of send out a big, nice pink flower spike, and the coreopsis is kind of like the feathery fronds in the back, and it'll get some really pretty light lemony yellow flowers, which are, I think, really gorgeous. They're native, and so it'll probably attract a lot of our native pollinators. And then we have some of these fan flowers, which I really like the shape of them. They look like little hands. So wasn't planning on putting those in, but I think that looks pretty good. All right, so let's move on to the next one. This is a slightly larger pot, and you'll see that it has kind of a rose on it. So there's a lot that we could do. I really want to plant this one up because if my mom comes back, she'll be able to see that I planted it up. And I want some consistency because maybe with the coreopsis. I also got this really beautiful cone flower, which is a white cone flower, which I think could also look pretty good. That's already starting to feel like Three's Company. Now, you'll notice that this has fronds, feathery fronds, and so does this coreopsis. So we could also go alternative and go with a coreopsis that has a thicker leaf, like that. Yeah, let's see what we could play with there. Okay, so this is a slightly lower pot, so I just want to make sure that when I put this in here. So this is a delphinium blue butterfly. My mom loved that color, and I was happy to have her pick out one of her favorites. So, and have that in the back because I think that's going to be kind of the biggest one. Might lift it up a little bit more. This is called Sylvester coreopsis. Coreopsis verticillata sylvester. So this one is also pretty root bound. You can see just under there that the roots are kind of circling down below. These are pretty drought tolerant plants, by the way, so, but I could see this one's starting to look a little droopy, so it needs a little bit more water. Like I said, I got this one a few days ago, so I came down and watered it the other day, but when it's under this awning, it's not going to get as much water. Okay, so I'll have that. And then this is the Prairie Splendor White Compact Coneflower. So coneflowers, if you go with like Echinacea angustifolia or Pallida, those will often be very tall, like 3, maybe even 4 feet tall. But these cultivars are a little less aggressive as far as like height goes. This is called Leading Lady Lauren. Let me see here. I'm gonna work with this and I'm gonna really water it in because, like I said, that Coreopsis is feeling a little root bound and I wanna make sure that it gets enough water. We are supposed to have rain over the next like 5 days. At least there's like a 40 to 50% chance most days. And if they're just under the awning, they're not gonna get that rain, like I said. So you can see it actually a little more like that. Let's move that over here. Okay, so I'm going to switch some things up here. This is the lavender, and this is Elegance Snow, so this gets to be white. And this doesn't have as big of a drainage hole on the bottom, and it has this little stopper as well. Might put the stopper in the bottom so when the soil goes in, it doesn't come out. So you could either drill a bit more holes in this, which I'm not going to do, or you could add much more drainage because the lavender does not like to be in a wet diaper. It doesn't like to have like wet feet, wet roots at all. So I'm going to use the regular potting medium, but I'm also going to use some vermiculite and perlite and just mix that in there and kind of work with it. And there is some perlite in there for drainage, but not a whole lot. So on another one of my videos, I have the difference of perlite and vermiculite, and in some cases they, provide similar qualities and in some cases different. So I'll link to that video as well. So this is the Elegant Snow. And I think I could probably fit about 3 in here. It smells so good. So yeah, so the gardens around the area are gonna be mainly whites and lavenders or whites and lilacs. So that's gonna be more of the restricted color palette within the surrounding garden. So I wanna kind of carry that out into the front. And I might even think about like turning part of that lawn because the grass is like such an annoyance to actually take care of, and I might actually do a really dense planting of like white flowers that I think would look really pretty. So this is how I'm kind of doing it. It's nothing to it. I think it's just going to be beautiful smelling lavender. Will provide a really nice pollinator plant. I mean, bees have a tendency to really like this. I'm just going to fill it in and put some perlite on the side and just mix it up on the side. Just be careful you don't inhale that in too much. You could also wet it down a little bit. Makes it a little easier to work with. And I think what I'm going to do with these planters is I brought also Espoma's Bonsai mix, and it's usually for like, bonsai plants. But I like to use this as a topper because I think it looks really pretty. Kind of got shale chunks and clay chunks inside, so it's kind of this grayish and orange. Just add some bonsai around the edge. Might only have just enough for this pot. Nice. So there you go, you can see a little more of that, and that will spread out really nicely, and it should flower soon because the buds are coming up. Okay, so that's one, that's gonna go on the other side. So the next one's a bit more interesting. So again, these are kind of the lava pots, and I am going to go with this Anouk lavender. So it kind of has a purple and then fades into pink. And then I have this Muhlenbergia capillaris grass, and this is called White Cloud. And I got this actually from Rare Roots, which is a plant retailer that I absolutely love. It's an online retailer. And then I have this Elegance Snow Lavender, which is also kind of creamy white. I'm gonna see if I have the Muhlenbergia, which is purple. So I'm gonna do the white grass with the purple lavender, and I'm gonna do the purple grass with the white lavender, so it'll have a little contrast. So this, again, has a little drainage hole, much tinier, so I'm gonna add, again, some of the perlite and the vermiculite in here just to have it more well draining, because all these plants would appreciate, you know, not sitting in wetness. I'll water that in afterwards. So let me try to get my hoary knife and just kind of cut up some of the bottom. Get some of the roots, and then I'll just fill in the rest with the rest of the potting medium. Okay. So there you go. I'm going to move those over to the other side. I'll show you what we come up with. Stay tuned because I'll be working on the plant palette for this patio and the home in some subsequent videos here on Plant One On Me. And if you'd like to see the befores and afters on this renovation, then you'll have to tune in to our sister channel at Flock Finger Lakes. If you dig these videos, please consider giving them a thumbs up, follow along through subscribing, and hitting that notifications button. And keep in mind that we have a suite of online houseplant courses and helpful downloads, which you could find at homesteadbrooklyn.com. We'll see you in the next video.